57-02, Enbridge Gas, Utah's Integrated Resource Plan for the plan year of June 1st, 2025 to May 31st, 2026. My name is Melinda Crabiel, and I am the PSC's facilitator for this conference. So let's start with introductions over here.
Sure. I am Jennifer Clark. I'm counsel for Enbridge Gas Utah.
I'm Steve Wall. I'm in the gas supply group for Enbridge Gas Utah.
Rodrigo Ortiz, Gas Supply, Enbridge as well.
Jeff Roberts, Supervisor Assistant Planning, Enbridge.
I'm going to throw you all off. I'm Will Schwarzenbach. I'm the Director of Engineering and Project Management for Enbridge Gas Utah. So transitioning out of the role of Manager of Gas Supply. So still kind of handling it for now, but transitioning out. So.
I'm Jason Ellsworth, and I'm a ratepayer to Enbridge, and I love it. We did not pay him to say that.
He paid you to say it.
That's right.
Dave Clark with the Commission.
John Harvey, Commissioner.
Jerry Fannin, Commissioner.
John Delaney with the Commission.
Brenda Salter with the Division of Public Utilities.
Annette Orton with the Division.
Brian Daigle with the Division.
David Fields with the Division.
Casey Coleman with the Division.
Doug Wheelwright with the division.
Kelly Mendenhall with Enbridge.
Patrick Gucci, AAG, representing the division.
Jeremy Hershey with the division.
Matt Pernickoli with the Division.
Abdinasir Abdullah with the Division.
Bela Vaslag with the Utah Office of Consumer Services.
Jacob Zachary, also with the Utah Office of Consumer Services.
I'm Eric Orton with the Division.
Welcome to you all. Let's turn it over to Enbridge Gas.
All right. So as Will mentioned, you know, we're used to hearing Will talk a lot in these meetings as the manager of gas supply. And so for those of you who know Mike Deal, he retired. And Will has assumed his responsibility as Director of Engineering, and we're still seeking your replacement for Will, so he's kind of doing double duty today. But Steve Wall will be sharing a lot of the gas supply slides that in the past have been done by Will. So this year we've got 4 meetings scheduled, and these are the topics and the dates. So obviously today is the March 4th meeting. There are some new topics. The data centers we'll talk about quite a bit on the 6th in a confidential meeting. The rest of them seem to be similar. Heating season review, LNG, we've got some exciting news to share there. That's a little teaser for April 10th. But if we go back to the IRP standards and guidelines, there were a certain number of items that in that docket were determined we needed to include every year in our IRP. And so here you can see the guidelines of what needed to be done and the sections where you can find those items. And here's the order from last year, the 2024 IRP. Basically, the Commission acknowledged it. We got a lot of good feedback from the division office. Appreciate that you read it and then that you provided some interesting feedback, and we will try to incorporate some of those comments in this year's IRP. These are the sections that no changes to the sections of the IRP from what we did last year. And then every year that we've kind of been doing this the last few years, we meet before we kick this thing off with the office and division to get some feedback on some things that they would like to see in the upfront or the upcoming IRP. So this year, data centers is a big issue, and so like I mentioned, we'll add some additional information in the IRP. And then we'll probably go into an even deeper dive into data centers in that confidential tech conference in April. Opposing trends. So this is a discussion about, you've got some aspirational policies about an economy that runs on fossil-free energy, but then you've also compare that to the fact that, you know, I think January 21st we hit an all-time record gas demand. And so how do we kind of marry those two schools of thought? So the office would like us to do a little bit more discussion on that. So I think we plan on doing that. a discussion on, for those of you who've been in these meetings in the past over the last several years, there's a long-term goal, I think, on our system. And when I say long-term, none of us will probably be there when it happens, but it's to build a 720 pressure corridor that goes all the way through the Wasatch Front. So there's portions of our system that are at 720, but that's a long-term planning goal. So a little more detail on that. We talked a little bit about IRP variance report, and due to some of the data that we get from Wexpro, there's a two-month lag on when we can report. And so the division expressed concern about, we file the IRP July 1st. I don't think we get the fourth quarter IRP variance from last year out till, September 1st, I think. So the thought was maybe we just need to push the reply comments past that September 1st date to give all the parties not only the opportunity to review the IRP, but to see everything that happened in the prior year, so they can make a more informed analysis. So I think that's a proposal that we'll have going forward. Wexpro, we talked about, and you'll see this today, we have some slides where we talk about what a typical day looks like, a typical winter day and a peak winter day, and how much of that gas supply is provided by Wexpro. We've also now added what the summer looks like, a typical summer day looks like with Wexpro production. That's something the division's been asking for, and so you'll see that today in the presentation. And then LNG usage, just a discussion on when would we use the facility, what are the main drivers that would cause us to turn it on and need it. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in our next tech conference. And with that, I will turn over to Steve to talk about transportation planning.
All right, thanks guys. Thanks Kelly. So good morning everybody. I'll just introduce myself a little bit real quickly. So I presented in a couple of these tech conferences, usually the RFP review. But born and raised here in Utah, live in a small town in Santaquin, where I met my wife, been here forever. Started with the company about 18 years ago. My background's in accounting, and then I got my master's in business administration. Been in the gas supply group for 8 years, all those 8 years under the great tutelage of Will Schwarzenbach, who's been here for 13 years. So we're excited for him and his new adventure as the Director of Engineering and Project Management, but glad that he stayed with the company so we can kind of rely on his knowledge and expertise. So I'll just try to keep the train on the track here. So let's talk about our storage and transportation planning, and let's first start with our strategy. So this is a kind of a retread of a slide that we showed last year. But really our strategy is to be reliable, but also at the same time staying cost efficient or effective for our customers. So in this slide, you'll see on the right side, these are some of the things that we do to be reliable. We go get firm transportation capacity, we build that Magna LNG facility. That's more on the reliability side. Now, as we get more to the center, access to diverse supply points. We try to pick up supply at different areas in the United States, some out west, some out east, to try to help us diversify. If prices go crazy in the west, we can move a little bit to the east and get supply from there. Also, if there's constraints on one section of pipe out west or out east, we can kind of move that supply and bring it from different sources. Storage capacity, that's kind of in the middle as well. It's great to store that gas when it's cheap in the summer and then bring it out when prices are a little high in the winter. And it's also reliable in that we have that minimum daily quantity that we can get out of that storage facility on a daily basis. So it's very, very reliable as well. And then hedging is more on the left side where it's more cost efficient. This is where we go out and do our fixed price deals, our first of month pricing deals, and things like that, just to kind of hedge against those high run-ups on the daily volumes that we see sometimes. So that's kind of our strategy, and that's kind of how we try to do things in the gas supply group. So let's look at some of our transportation contracts, our transportation firm transportation contracts that we have. So if we look at this slide, you can see the pipelines where we hold across the top, where we hold transportation supply. And it's sorted here by the highest to the lowest from left to right. So Mountain West Pipeline is where we have the most amount of our transportation, firm transportation contracts, at about just over a BCF. And just as a disclaimer, some of these contracts are winter only, and this is only showing winter only capacity. So they do drop off a little bit in the summer months when we don't really need that transportation capacity. Then if we look to the left, this is the type of contracts that we have. So a lot of these contracts have been around for years and they're gonna run for years, so I'm not gonna hit on each of them, but I am gonna call out some of the new ones or some of the ones that I think we need to kind of pay attention to here. So this one in red right here is a new contract that we got just in February through an open season with Kern. The contract runs from November through February. It was an open season that was in February, and it's planned to begin, well, it will begin in November of 2026. And the great thing about this capacity is that it doesn't come along very often. That pipeline's been fully subscribed for a long time. This capacity finally became available. We've been on it for 15 years and we ended up getting it. And also what's great about it is you can see it's kind of shaped to when we have high demand for natural gas. So in November, we have just over 48,000 decatherms of capacity there. In December, it ramps up to 65. In January, it peaks at about 73,000 and then ramps back down in February at 56,000. So it's great because we're not paying for that transportation, that firm transportation throughout the year. So we don't have it in the summer when we don't need it, but we are getting those incremental volumes when we really need it, when demand is really high. So that's one that we're super excited about. Again, that will come on in November of 2026, but we're really excited that that capacity came available and that we were able to win that capacity just recently in February. So that's an exciting one. Another one right here is if you look at the asterisks, the preceding agreement that we have on Northwest Pipeline. That's 25,000. So it's a preceding agreement because it's contingent on the project completion, which we expect to be done in December 1st of this upcoming year. And what that did is that got us supply, or it got us capacity to Stansville, Oregon, to kind of help us, like I said on that first slide, diversify our supply points. It helped us move out east a little bit more, just in case the west gets constrained or the prices run up or on the east side a little bit more. So kind of moves allows us to get a little bit more supply from the west.
So Steve, a real quick
Yeah.
update on that. I did talk to Gary Benz with Northwest Pipeline yesterday. The reason it says 25 or 26, it depends on their permits, them being able to get the land. There's a project associated with it. They said they're still hoping for 2025, but it did sound like there are some holdups that it might not be till 26. So I just thought I'd kind of throw that out there because I did talk to him yesterday.
Yeah.
So is this a new gate station, or is it just capacity on their pipe?
Just capacity on their pipe.
So it's not your project, it's theirs?
Yes.
It's their project, so we'll work with them and we'll make sure and kind of see that time frame of when that project's expected to be complete, when that capacity will be available. But at the latest, it'll be December 1st of 2026. That's kind of what they told us. And then the last one of note is this last, it's just a little bit of CIG capacity. It's 400 decatherms. That's capacity that we use to serve a small town of Wamsutter in Wyoming. It's 400 decatherms. That contract is expiring, coming in December of 25, or not December, October of 25. And so we'll be working with CIG on extending that contract to make sure we can still serve that town of Wamsutter. Now, as we go down, these are different types of contracts that we have on each of these pipelines. So the firm peaking contracts, those contracts, the only real thing to note is that we did extend those to this next year, so to 2025. So those actually rolled off just barely. So we'll have to work with Mountain West Pipeline on extending those again. So during this year, we'll be working with Mountain West Pipeline on extending that firm peaking contract with them. And then also of note is our hourly peaking on Kern River Pipeline. That one, we actually recontracted just this last year. So it used to run from November 15th through February 15th. We recontracted to include the first half of November and the last half of February, just to help us with those colder shoulder months. So we recontracted those. That will run until 2029. And then we have our no-notice contract that runs through 2027. So that's kind of a summary of our transportation contracts. So now let's look at our storage contracts. So again, on the top you see the pipelines that we have those with, Mountain West and Spire Storage. There are two current pipelines that we have storage with. Right here's our section of firm storage. So again, Mountain West Pipelines, where we hold the majority of our firm storage, just under 13.5 BCF at Clay Basin. And so it did end date on 3/31/25, this 997 contract, but we recontracted that in October of 2024 and ran it through 2030. So really not much change there from the last time we met with you guys on the storage contracts. One thing of note is that Mountain West Pipeline did make available 8 BCF of interruptible storage this last year. We had our concerns if that would affect our deliverability, how much gas we could get out on a given day, if that was going to affect how much we could get out or put into that storage facility. We had a lot of talks with them, a lot of concerns. We expressed our concerns with them, but we got adequate assurance from them that they will not impact at all our ability to get gas out or in a clay basin. It will not affect our firm storage contracts. So I know that was a concern that we brought up.
So you didn't bid on that? That wasn't something you wanted?
No, that interruptible storage.
Because?
And I think it's more the reliability side of things. Because it's not real reliable trying to pull that gas out on an interruptible basis, and where we focus on reliability to our customers. If everybody's pulling out, it's just hard to get out anyways. And that's kind of what our no notice service does anyways. If we need over that, it's gonna fill it,
So there wouldn't be a situation where you could use the interruptible first and save the firm for later?
I don't see a situation like that. Will, do you see a situation?
So it's really a matter of the injection rates, right? Like, yeah, we could do that with the volume that's in there, and you could pull it out interruptibly, but when push comes to shove on those bigger days that you really need it, you're not getting any additional withdrawal. So we'd still be limited to the 111
It's the daily
out of it.
amount that
It really gives you space, but because the injection and withdrawal are interruptible, you kind of have to play each day and hope that you can get gas in or out of that storage amount. I mean, we could shift our firm volumes in there, but again, we're still going to be limited to our firm injection amount, especially like we saw this year, is that interruptible really didn't get in or out at all this summer. Like injection wise, like there was no space for interruptible to really get in. And then we see kind of the same thing. It's kind of hit or miss each day, so it really lessens the value there because you just don't know if you're going to get it in or out. So,
have there been years where you've used up all of your capacity in Clay Basin?
so our space, yeah, we've gotten to zero with our. But it might not have been full those years, right? Like, so there are years where we'll get all the way to full, and there are years we'll get all the way to empty. But again, because of the interruptible nature of this, it really wasn't going to give us much more that we could rely on.
It's hard for me to quite understand it.
Yeah, we can kind of go over it more with you and show you some graphs and stuff.
Yeah. We'd be happy to sit down and talk about it. All right, the other type of storage that we have is the peaking storage, which is the aquifers, Colville, Leroy, and Chalk Creek. So the only change with those is that per Mountain West's request, we used to have those on 3 separate contracts. They wanted to roll them all up into one, which didn't change anything. It didn't change how much we could put into them. It didn't change our capacity. It didn't change how much we could pull out on a day from them. Just kind of made it easier from a management standpoint. Then now we just have to tell them how much we want out of them, and they kind of manage the aquifers in the most efficient way that they see, because they are the experts on those aquifers. So.
They give you a price break?
They did not. They did not give us a price break, but we didn't pay more either. So so there's the positive there. So it really is, and it does simplify our side of things too. So it lets them just manage them and utilize them in the most efficient way possible. So and it did not impact any of our capacity or our ability to withdraw.
So you only have to make one order instead of 3 now?
Exactly. So yeah, made my life and Rodrigo's life much easier. So we sent him a gift basket for doing that. That was very nice. That was very nice of him. So, all right. Any other questions on the storage before we move on?
Is the Spire amount the same as last time?
The Spire amount is the same. So 2 BCF. 2 BCF. Our daily amount that we can get out of there is 22,000. So none of that changed. Same amount, and that goes till 2029. So it's been great to have that storage facility. Okay, now let's talk about kind of looking into the future and what our transportation future kind of looks like. So there's a couple of things here. Let's start with the northwest side. So there's we kind of already touched on this, but this is the preceding agreement. That's the 25,000 decatherms we got for 10 years. That gives us access to Stansville, Oregon. Helps us kind of diversify the supplies we talked about. And that's expected to come on either this December or next December, sounding more like from Will's conversations next December.
Still hopeful for this one.
Yeah, still hopeful, still holding out. Still hopeful.
So is that like a backhaul agreement then? It's all in Oregon?
Yeah, kind of. So it will be flowing from the west to the east back to us.
But their pipe kind of goes back.
It's bi-directional.
Right. What's that?
It goes both
It goes
directions,
both
so that,
ways, yep.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's bi-directional, so, but it will be flowing from the west to east. So if there's ever constraints, on the east, we can move it down. So that'll be great. Mountain West, so there was actually something that I didn't include in here. There was an overthrust expansion that they also did that we chose not to bid on. So, and the reason being is because it didn't really give us more city gate capacity or bring more to our gates. So I guess the juice really wasn't worth the squeeze. When we tried to pencil out the cost of it, it really wasn't worth it because it didn't give us more supply at the end city gates where we really needed it. So, but now let's talk about this Fiddler expansion. This is something that we're really excited about. So it can become available as soon as November 1st of 2028. So they just put out a non-binding open season that we submitted a non-binding offer to. But what it is it gives up to 250,000 decatherms of capacity a day from Fiddler to Goshen, and it actually includes just a small amount of White River Hub. So what's great about that is, one, White River Hub is a very liquid point, and it's some of the cheapest gas that we can buy. So we're really excited about that, being able to get access, because right now we're fully subscribed. We've got as much as we can at White River Hub. It gives us a little bit more, which would be really, really nice. So a little bit cheaper gas gives us a little bit more access to that. But even more exciting is that this has deliveries to Goshen and the Payson Gate, which are right here on the southern side of our system, which we've been looking for a while. So I know our system designing team and our project engineers are really excited about this. So we submitted a non-binding offer, and right now where they're at with this is they're kind of just trying to test the waters to see what kind of interest there is in this. It's going to cost quite a bit to build this expansion, to make the upgrades necessary to get this there, but they're just trying to see the interest. And from what I heard yesterday in their customer meeting is there was strong interest. So hoping that will go through and that will provide us even more capacity. And that gives us city gate capacity too, which is big. Yeah.
How many miles would that of construction do they have to undertake to?
I'll go to our engineer here. Yeah, I don't know how
So
many miles it is.
that kind of depends on how big they make it, right? That's what they're trying to do right now, is figure out how much interest, what volume, and then they've got to go back and say they've got a bunch of different projects depending on how much they're going to add. So the initial part is putting in some compression, so it's not really even pipe, and then depending on how much additional capacity, if they get 200,000 of interest, then they would have to replace, X amount of pipe. So it's really dependent on the interest, and that's what they're trying to figure out right now is what will the, based on how much interest, they'll better define what the actual project is and what cost they need to support it, and then they'll do a binding open season. So this is kind of the preliminary type open season to just figure out what that project will exactly look like.
But at most they'll just be expanding pipe in existing.
Yes. Yeah,
rights of way.
They would be, kind of loop. I don't know whether they're going to loop or replace, but yeah, it's existing pipeline right away that they'd be putting new pipe in. But a big portion of it is compression.
Yeah.
Yeah, you said it was fully subscribed currently?
Yes, currently, yes.
Does that mean from the White River to Indianola?
Yes. Yep, White River all the way to Goshen. So yeah, currently with our transportation capacity right now, we have as much capacity as we can. And if we could get more, we would love to get more, but it's just not available. But this would make a little bit available. It's not a huge amount. It would make a little bit more available to us. So
Would it involve any new construction on your part to hook up to?
Nope.
It's already there.
no new construction on our part. Everything would be good to go. Yep. And it does give us access to points where Wexboro is looking at growing and acquiring a bit more of production too. So it would help bring that gas on. So there would be gas there. Even if it wasn't at White River Hub, there's still gas down there that we could pull out and move down to those southern city gates.
I know we've talked a lot in the past about, the Uinta Basin production, and the Uinta Basin production side of things is a little bit bottlenecked, right? So this is, part of this proposal is they're trying to de-bottleneck that Uinta Basin production, help the producers in the Uinta Basin get some of that gas out of there. It's kind of what they're hoping for.
Yeah, it would be great. It would be great. Any other questions? All right. So again, long-term transportation planning. This is Tallgrass pipelines. So we're looking at Ruby Pipeline and Rockies Express. Let's start with Rockies Express. What would be great about that is it would give us diversified supply again, different supply points. It would also give us potential deliveries to that White River Hub point and move it out to Goshen. But the only issue, I mean, we looked at a few options, but there's just too many constraints between or Rockies Express and where our existing capacity is. So currently not really any viable options on Rockies Express. But Ruby Pipeline, over here on your left, this is one where we're pretty excited about too. So Ruby Pipeline currently has over 1 BCF of unsubscribed capacity, so open capacity that's available out there. The current rate right now is, as you can see, is just over $1, 1.137 per decatherm. Now because there's so much unsubscribed capacity, I think we could get a pretty good negotiated rate on that, but we'd have to get in contract discussions. But the picture that you see down below, this is Ruby Pipeline right here that runs right here. So here's some of the good things with this Ruby Pipeline that we kind of see. One is it has access to that Spire storage where we already have that 2 BCF of capacity on Spire storage. But also, there's a tap around Brigham City right here that we could tap into. And all we need to do is just build some facilities there, which with a director of engineering and project management now with a gas supply knowledge, that's going to be something that will be very beneficial because that gives us more city gate supply. So there's two options. We could buy transport on there and move the gas, buy the gas down here at Opal and transport it to the city gate. Or we could have somebody else transport it for us and deliver it right to the city gate to us, which are both great options.
How much are you looking for?
Again, to the system engineer and the
I don't think we have that number defined or anything right now. We're still just, I think and I'll look at my system planning guy here, but I think 90,000 decatherms is about as much as we could really pull, unless we have like a large customer that's there as well that could pull it away. But as far as takeaway capacity, I think we're kind of limited there. We do have, going back to my engineering days when they built Ruby Pipeline, we did build we put in a valve on their pipeline right there and bought a piece of property. What I'm told now is they didn't buy a big enough piece of property for kind of how we like to do it, so we might have to expand that property to do it. But it does save us some cost of not having to tap the Ruby Pipeline. We already have a takeoff valve there and some property. So we've done some things to kind of set up for it and prepare for it, but just something we're looking to do.
So I have another question with Rex. Are they doing an expansion or what? Why does that come up again?
Rex, so we just kind of showed it, I think, here. There's no expansion. We have talked to him about potential expansions and things like that, but there's really nothing there. And like I said, there's really nothing really viable with the existing constraints that are on there that get us anything that really we're interested in. Right
So that was always just kind of a thought of really extending further east and kind of diversifying the market, right? All the way to like
east of Cheyenne.
Oh yeah, east of Cheyenne. Like there's a bunch of different options, right? Because Rex goes all the way from like Wamsutter all the way to, I think it's Clarington, so kind of across the whole country. So we just kind of keep an eye on it to see if there's anything that comes available that might work, and if the spreads would have to work too, right? It would almost fall more under the hedging side of things, is really trying to diversify completely like that location of where we're buying. So buying kind of Marcellus gas as opposed to buying Rockies gas. So it's kind of that concept, and until like the numbers pencil out right, or there's really some big push, it's kind of just keeping an eye on it.
Yeah, I get it. So nothing's changed. You just
question.
Yeah.
You said Ruby gives you access to Spire West, and that's on the very far right.
Yeah.
Correct? Yeah.
Yeah, over here. Yeah, and I'll show another slide here later on that shows kind of all of the pipelines and some of these points that we talked about to kind of give you a better idea of where they're all located. So yeah. All right, now let's look at our long-term storage planning. Okay, some of the things that we're looking at, long-term storage. So we've got our Spire Storage West. Again, that future Ruby pipeline that could tie into that would be nice. And then we'll just continue to work on them if capacity comes available, if open season's still available for capacity. I think we'd like to expand it. One that we've been looking at is Magman Storage. So they have some salt caverns in Delta, Utah that sit about 20 miles from Kern River's main line. So we're looking at the possibility of potentially creating those as a natural gas storage facility. But there still needs to be pipeline and infrastructure put in so that we could get gas in and out of there, and it would tie right into our current capacity. So it would be nice, but it's still just a thought at this point, yeah.
Yeah, so have they developed the caverns?
The caverns are there, but like I said, it's just a thought. We're talking about it, the viability of being able to put gas in there and take it out is kind of the big issue, and that infrastructure that we need a line from there to get it in and out into Kern River's pipeline. Yeah.
How much storage is it?
So I haven't been in those discussions, and I don't know how
As much as we would want. So the formation is there. They have a couple of different caverns they have kind of proposed they could mine. So I mean, it's as big as we could make it. I think the limiting factor there would more so be our how much we could put in and out of it, because we would have to ship on Kern River's pipe. So it would be kind of limited by more of our Kern River capacity than anything else. Like, they could probably go, I want to say 10 BCF or something like that in the storage facility. But it's how much we could get in and out and move on the pipeline that would be kind of the limiting factor there. And these discussions have been going on for years, right? But they're still continuing. They still have their FERC certificate. They're still talking to us. We talk to them on a regular basis, and definitely still looking at options. But the big piece right now that's kind of the question mark is they have to have a line between their facility and Kern River, and Kern River recently built almost that same line to serve the Intermountain Power Plant, but that capacity is reserved for the Intermountain Power Plant. So there's a pipe there, but there's not really any space available on it. So we'd probably have to look at putting another pipe in. But it'd really be just limited by the current capacity.
The other
Question for you, what would be the cost to run the pipe?
Yeah, I don't think we've even looked into that yet.
That's the big question is, you know, what exactly do they need to do, and how much then would they turn around? So it's not I believe it's not a cost-based facility. It would be a market-based facility. So they could kind of set the price as to what they want to get, but they need kind of an anchor tenant. So that's kind of the world that they're in right now, is trying to figure out, okay, how much would it really cost to get this thing off the ground, and is anybody willing to pay that cost? And that's kind of where they're at right now. So they haven't really given us hey, for X dollars you can walk off the lot with this thing, right? We're not at that point yet, so they haven't given us it.
All right, any questions anymore with Megan? All right, so Mountain West Pipeline. So we've been talking with them about the possibilities of expanding our existing aquifer facilities. So when I say expanding, what it would do is it would provide us more ability to withdraw or inject on a given day. So the bucket doesn't really get bigger on how much we can put into the aquifers. What does happen is it allows us to pull more out on a given day and put a little bit more in on a given day. So the cost with that would be the same rate that we're paying, but we do pay on deliverability. So our withdrawal would go up by $42,375. So that cost would be included, but at the same rate that we're currently paying on the 184 that we have right now. So we're kind of just trying to look at the value of that and trying to pencil out all the details of that to see if it's really worth it. It does drain our aquifers faster, but with the LNG facility, do we really need to get more out on a given day than what we currently can? So that's kind of the discussions that we're having with that and kind of looking into that and see if that's worth that. So we're looking at that, and then on this last one, this Enbridge developed storage, I'm just gonna caveat this, but this is just an idea. This is just brainstorming. We're looking at everything. But we're looking at the possibility of maybe using some depleted wells and seeing if that's an option of storing some gas into some of these depleted wells that we've already used up and that have been abandoned, store them into there and bringing them back out. So that's still early on. We're still looking at it. We're still, but yeah, just an idea for now that I thought we'd throw on here.
So Steve, do you mind if we go back to the aquifer discussion real
Yeah.
quick? I just kind of want to, does anybody have any thoughts on that? Because we've kind of gone back and forth on it a little bit because it does give more deliverability on the day, right? Kind of the opposite of what we were talking about with the interruptible storage is you actually would have firm deliverability on the day, but with the finite amount that's in the aquifers, it also means they ratchet down a lot faster, right? Like if we go back to Uri, because that's my example of when we used the aquifers as much as we could possibly use them over that period, right? Like we drew them down pretty quickly. This would, like for those first couple days, you would actually have quite a bit more. You'd have 43,000 more, 42,000 more of deliverability, but it just means like you're gonna have less days because you're gonna drain it a lot quicker and it's gonna ratchet down on you. So the first couple days will be stronger. Like the tail end of that event would have been less. I don't know. I kind of thinking, get your feedback on what you think about that.
I have a question before.
Okay.
So what's the ratio? Is it depleted now in 5 days instead of 20? Or 2 hours instead of 10 days? Or what's the difference?
It would probably shorten it by, like, I would say probably a couple days, right? Like, what would have taken, because it's really hard to say because there's, we always get the schedules based on where you actually, how much you actually have in it.
Yeah,
So if
yeah.
you're 100% full, it's going to take you X amount of days, and it's not, like, I don't have those numbers
But
memorized.
if we assume it's 100% full, now it would take,
Like, and maybe 5 days, and it's not like, oh, we're completely empty in 5 days. It's, you just start hitting those ratchets where now instead of, full deliverability of 184, what we have now, you're getting 150. Now it's going to go down from, oh, we're at 184, we're at 120, we're at 100, right, the next day. So that deliverability is going to drop, not necessarily it's going to get emptier quicker. You're really going to start hitting your ratchets a lot quicker. But it does give you for a couple days quite a bit more of withdrawal.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's about 20% more, 87, 40?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, I mean, it shouldn't reduce it, well, it can't reduce it more than 20%, right?
Just speeds it up.
I mean, if it was
You would
5
think.
days, it would do 4 days.
Yeah.
Or am I thinking of it wrong? That's what I'm trying to understand.
Sounds about right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you ever depleted you're gonna hold them down to zero?
The aquifers?
Yeah.
I think we've gotten close. But we typically keep them, we like to keep them at a certain percentage through the clay test. So the big storage facility, they do a test every year where they shut that gas in. And so that's where the aquifers, we really need those to balance any swings in load. So, but after that clay test, then we do drive them down pretty close to zero.
And I would say Uri's probably the one time we went from like being about as full as we could be to being about as empty as we could be in that week or two period. We really drained them out completely. I don't know that we hit zero in that, but we got to what our kind of minimum deliverability would be that we could stay at for a little while.
So really where I guess I see this as a disadvantage is if you have extended cold, right? But then you're pulling out really, really hard, and then like Will said, you hit those ratchets towards the end of that cold season, and you can't really pull out as much.
Have you done any modeling based on actual events to compare? That would be interesting to see.
No, we could do that, yeah.
Which would work better in each of those situations.
Or even in, sorry, I was gonna actually ask that exact question, or even in previous events, I mean, just, oh, sorry,
Yeah, like kind of recreate Uri and see what would happen.
Yeah.
The tricky part with Uri, right, was like, it was a long weekend beforehand, so we, saw high pricing on Friday, and we used, we're like, oh wow, it was as high as we had ever seen pricing. So we pulled out as much as we could over that 3-day weekend. Well, then Tuesday came along, and instead of the pricing starting to drop off like we thought it would, it actually went higher on Tuesday. So, but we had kind of depleted already. In this scenario, now we would have been at the even higher rate, and then when we got to like Tuesday, Wednesday, when prices actually went up, we would have had even less deliverability. So that's kind of what gives me pause on it a little bit, but we can absolutely run a similar scenario, and I think that's a great idea. Let's go back and
Maybe there's some other events in the past that you could do the same thing on. Different situation might show that it's more advantageous or not.
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah,
So
we
can
can
do
be the
that.
worst case scenario every time.
And I like committing to that because it's not going to be me that's doing it.
Me either, so.
Someone, are you okay with that, Steve?
Yeah, I don't know if I like that idea. No, that would be great. That's a great idea. Yeah.
As long as you're committing to modeling.
Door's now open.
I mean, it just sounds to me like having a lot more storage in the case of Uri would have been really, really nice.
Yeah.
So maybe just include a what-if scenario if you had another 5 PCF at Magnum.
Yeah, I like that idea too. Yeah. And storage is great for that because not only like that first slide that we showed, it's reliable, but it's also cost efficient. So that's why, I mean, we show this slide, and I think the next slide here too, just to show, like, there's no change in this slide either. We looked at Spire, Storage had another storage facility in South Plains, but there's capacity constraints that make it so we can't get it to anywhere where we have firm transport capacity. And the same thing with Jackson Prairie. But we just show this slide mainly for this bottom part here, that there's no stone unturned. We're looking at every storage facility, we're looking at all options, and that's why I even put that Enbridge developed idea that we're even brainstorming, like we're looking at all those options.
So even Enbridge is looking at it instead of Dominion Energy.
Yeah, so what we
They say,
this
who's
slide wasn't-
DEW?
Yeah, that needs to be updated.
UWI.
Good catch though, yeah.
There's another one. Did you catch the? I caught the other one.
I don't even know what that is anymore. I don't know
Dominion
what that is.
Energy.
So, yeah, but yeah, Enbridge, even
that's good to
Enbridge is
know.
looking at it
Yeah.
too. Yeah. So it's nice. So no stone unturned, we're looking at all storage options and trying to think outside the box and basically get more storage capacity. So that's kind of our long-term planning for storage and transportation. This was a slide that I promised you we would show that kind of shows all of the pipelines that we've been looking at, all of the storage facilities. There's that South Plains that I was talking about that was kind of constrained. Here's where that Spire Storage West is with that Ruby pipeline across here, and then this sideward H right here, sideways H with Clay Basin.
Where's the Jackson Prairie?
Jackson Prairie's
Up there.
right here, yeah. Yeah, so it's just, we can't do it. So, that's kind of a good slide to just look at to kind of see kind of the infrastructure that's around here. Okay, so we'll go into gas hedging now. So, again, we'll start with kind of what our strategy is and what our considerations are when we look at hedging. So we want to work with Wexpro to potentially increase that cost of service production. That's always something that we look at and we try to maximize there. We like we just said, additional storage options. Reduce the first of the month price base load exposure. So I'll show in the next slide how we kind of did that. And then diversify the first of the month locations to avoid constraints and secure reliable supply at key locations. So let's kind of look at our supply exposure, and what we're going to do is we're going to compare this 23 and 24 versus 24 and 25 heating season. So right here we have our 23 and 24 heating season. So as you look, fixed price deals that we did 84,000 in 23 and 24. In 24 and 25 we did 80,000. So not much change there. Nothing really to note there. Here's where the big change was, and the thing that I think we're probably most proud of here is the daily index. In the 23 and 24, we had 45,000 that was base loaded in the daily index. We brought that down to 12,000 in 24 and 25. What that does is it just helps us avoid those daily run-ups on cold weather events. helps hedge against those. Again, the monthly index, you can see what we took off of here, we basically put into our first of the month index. And what we really like is if you look under here under the monthly index, this is kind of how we broke them out. The first of the month pricing that kind of can listen to 1 year was the SoCal pricing at 30,000, which we had in 23 and 24. We brought that completely down to 0. So now we're completely at Northwest Rockies pricing and CIP pricing on those first of the month indexes. So you can see that the net change in our base load is not much, 4,500 more, 2%. That's about it. Our peaking deals have been great for us this year. We went from 143 in the 23-24 heat season to 234, which kind of just help us if there are those price run-ups, we have the price locked in, we can call them and they have it available for us. So that was really nice this year. So, yeah.
The trade-off, just as I'm understanding it correctly, the trade-off for switching a lot of the daily to the monthly is if you have a situation where the monthly price gets set really high, you're committed to that on that amount, right?
Yep. Any other questions?
Just clarify, the monthly index, you went up on that?
Yeah, to 41,000.
So if we have a first of the month pricing that's high, we're actually worse off now?
Yeah, we would be worse off. We would be worse off.
Why do we want to do that?
Because
We got
it's
burned last time.
It's less volatile than this daily index, though.
But that's where we got burned.
We got burned at this first of month pricing right here. The SoCal pricing is where we got burned.
Why?
So, was it a first of month or a daily that we got burned on?
We got burned on the first of month, but the dailies did run up high too. The dailies did run up high, but the first of month was more of our concern. It was more this pricing point because that gas went down to Southern California and there was high first of month pricing in there. And so we kind of got hit with that. Yeah.
So I see that you're trying to avoid that, but it seems to me that wasn't that just a function of that particular event of, in other words, where the cold was and you know that in California causing the power plants to need a lot more natural gas and in that area, and so that sucked the supply away. But if a different kind of event happened, you might have the same vulnerability in the
Yeah.
Northwest Rockies or some other place, right?
Yeah,
It
so
just
we
depends
looked at-
on where the weather is.
Yeah, it kind of does, yeah. But this SoCal typically will trade higher than Northwest. On a typical winter day, that SoCal will trade higher. And a lot of people, a lot of our suppliers pick this because of where the gas is located, where we're buying that gas, the location of the gas. And so what we were able to do is move it to this Northwest Rockies, and then maybe the adder was a little bit more. But it does help us kind of get away from that. That typically does trade higher than the Northwest Rockies does.
So a couple things to remember is if you probably showed this graph for 22-23 season, that monthly index number was probably even higher. So we did adjust down to the 140. Again, our modeling is what really guides us to a lot of this, right? The RFP modeling that we do guides us to a lot of this. But I think the big difference is where we added to that 140 was, going up 30,000 decatherms in that CIG index. So if you think back to that event where it did bite us, it was Northwest Rockies as well, not as bad as SoCal, but the CIG index at the same time wasn't. So while we've added a little bit more above that 140, where we added most of that was CIG index, which is kind of on the other side a lot of your constraints. So the additional that you're showing as a concern here, the additional 41, most of that was stuff that we added that really is, kind of isolated from that California type incident that we had. And a lot of this is just a result of what our modeling showed us to do.
And in the event of Uri, it was the exact opposite, right?
Right.
Like if you'd had a bunch of daily pricing, you would have been in really bad shape. The first of month actually protected you.
Right.
Because you had a spike up in the middle of the month, but the first of the month held at a reasonable level.
Yeah. So
it's give and take.
It's catch 22, right?
So on those contracts, how much of it is must take?
So all of these are must-take, the 273, 950 are must-takes. So we get that every day irregardless. This bottom number, this peaking number is 234, which is basically our suppliers tell us they'll hold in reserve to us till a certain amount, till a certain time in the morning. Should we need it, then we can call on it and they guarantee it for us. So the 273, 950. Yeah.
Are these delivered to the city gate? Is that the price? Or
Some
is
of
that
them
the-
are, some of them are, and some of them are not. Some of them we have to use our transportation capacity to move it on.
But you have enough, because you said you're fully subscribed on the CIG route to Indianola.
Yeah.
So if you
So-
buy more,
This does not flow on CIG's pipeline, it's just the CIG.
just their index.
It's their index, yep.
Oh, it's-
So like Will said, it kind of helps diversify because right out here we have the eastern pricing and then here we have the western, right? So it kind of helps instead of having SoCal, two west coast pricing points, we now have an east and a west.
So
It's not
suppliers are
like
kind of
transporting on
separated.
that.
They'll give it to us here, over here like an Opal, but they're gonna give it to us based on a CIG index instead of an Opal index.
Yep.
So,
So it's the contract price, not the.
not the location.
Not the transport location. Yep. Yeah.
So the big increase in the peaking deals, how are those priced?
So those are priced based, some are, well, most of them are based off of the daily index. But where the difference is the adders. So like during Uri, we could get Opal pricing, but the adders were driving up to like $100 per decatherm on top of the Opal index. Whereas some of these peakers, they're guaranteed an Opal flat where you don't have to pay any adder at all. And so that's where you kind of get those savings too.
And those we only pay if we take it, right? So only when you call on it. And the other advantage is, even more so from a cost hedging, is the supply reliability side, right? They have that gas designated to us. As long as we call on it by a certain time in the morning, that gas is guaranteed to us. So it's more of a reliability thing almost. Than it helps, like you said, when those adders really start running up, when supply constraints get high, those adders run up. But really, it also makes sure that we have that gas there to call on if we need it. So it's, again, going back to that strategy of cost efficient versus reliable, these kind of meet both those needs, right? They kind of keep the cost down, but it is on a daily index, so if the daily index rides up high, those are going to be high too, but it keeps the adder down, and it also makes sure that the supply will be there. And these are relatively low cost demand charges on it, so those are low cost ways to make sure that the supply will be there for us.
So the must-take contracts end usually what, in February or March? Or?
Yeah, February.
February.
We don't run a lot through March.
So right now, those are not in effect.
No, I think we have one base load deal that's in effect that we did clear throughout the summer. That's the only one, so I think it's 10,000 decatherms a day. But all the others have dropped off. We may have small volumes, but the vast majority of these drop off at the end of February. Any other questions on this? All right. Okay, so this is kind of what Kelly promised. We're going to look at our supply exposure in 24 and 25. So here in the green and the gray, like we've kind of said, some of those base first of months, we kind of consider them a hedge, but maybe not so much. So the green and the gray, we kind of consider our hedge, and then the red is subject, it's the daily market. So here in the black is kind of what you see on a peak day, what our demand would be. So 1.2 BCF, just over that. And this is kind of how we would meet that demand. And you can kind of see that graphically if you like. So 53% of that would be hedged in these ways through fixed price deals, through Wexpro, through storage, and through our base first of month. And then 47% would be subject to the daily index.
And would a fair bit of that storage would have been filled up with Wexpro in the summer?
In the summer, yep, exactly. Yep. Yep, and then on this right side, this is what a typical normal or a really cold day, a normal cold day in January or something would look like, is about a demand of 744 and how we would meet that demand. So when you lower that down, about 72% of our supply is hedged, compared to 28% that is not hedged. Any questions on that? So one of the things that has come up is this small amount of Wexpro. Like, why is that Wexpro amount only 22%? Why isn't it more? Well, that's why Kelly brought this up. In a summer day, that kind of flips. So now you kind of see how much of our supply on a typical summer day. So when you look at demand on a summer day, it's about 160,000 decatherms. 90,000 of that is just in demand, and then 70,000 is us filling in our storage with that Wexpro gas. So 94% of that demand is met with the Wexpro gas. And then this is just that small base load deal that our model told us to take throughout the summer last year. That will roll off at the end of May. So, but typically what you would see is 100% of this.
How come we don't do more Wexpro in the winter? Is it just because of the constraints as far as how much they can produce and supply during that time frame?
Yeah, basically the issue is these summer days, right? Like, we only have so much injection capacity. So I think if you're asking why don't we ramp it up in the winter, I think that would be a great thing to do, and then drop it back down in the summer. But I don't know that that's a possibility.
They don't really work like that.
That would be excellent, but the production does not work like that. I wish we could shape it like that.
When the well comes on, it produces what it produces, right? So it's pretty even across the year. They do try and time a lot of their completions and stuff so that, you know, they do the drilling over the summer and then they complete it usually in the fall, right before winter. So usually you'll see a bit of a spike in production through the winter, then it starts to kind of drop off again in the summer. So they do try and time it as best they can, but it's not really like, oh, we just turn on the spigot and we get a whole bunch of Wexpro and we kind of close it down for the next one, so or for the summer. But it would be nice if we could.
That's a great idea. We'd love to do that. We'd love to do that too.
When you guys figure it out.
Yeah, once we figure it out, that'd be really great. Yeah.
But I mean, that's the same story with production across the board, right? Like, that's why prices are generally less. I mean, I say generally because some summers they have not been, but that's why prices are generally less in the summer, right? Because you're getting the same amount of production throughout the year, generally, right? Like, there's ebbs and flows, but in the summer you have less demand, so everybody's putting it in storage, and you're kind of limited by your storage injection. So, I mean, it's Wexpro is very much just a kind of a smaller example of the national picture.
Makes sense.
But yeah, like Will said, they do try to do all their maintenance and everything in the summer to kind of drop that down. Hopefully full production is going in the winter, so they are getting a little bit more, but there's only so much they can do. Do you have a question?
No, just, I appreciate you putting this slide in here because it just brings out the point that we want to emphasize is the normal winter day Wexpro is about 22%.
Yeah.
And we keep hearing this, Wexpro's providing 55%, and it's really not. It's really not providing us 55% in the months where we need it.
Right.
We're getting about 22.
Right.
So I think if we focus on that, those are the times when we need the gas.
Right.
We don't need it in the summer.
Right.
But it's available on going into storage, but that's the number I think we need to focus on is not the 55, but this 22
It's
number.
22% on a typical winter day, right? And yeah, it would be great to get it 55% in the winter, but
Yeah.
like you brought up, we have nowhere to put it in the summer, so we'd be shutting in production if that's not possible.
This is very helpful, so thank you for putting that in there.
Yeah, you bet. Okay, any other questions on these two slides as we go? All right. Okay, so now let's kind of look at our.
I do have one question.
Yeah.
Go back.
One more?
Yeah, you showed 16% comes from storage.
Yeah.
Is that primarily storage coming from Wexpro? I mean, is that where you're adding your storage that is coming? Generally, I know it's not, you're not gonna, but 16% of that is Wexpro.
Yeah, so if we combine these two slides, in the summer is when we fill up storage, right? So we're filling it up with Wexpro gas, and then we're taking it out in the winter. It's basically that Wexpro gas that we put in the summer.
So storage could, I mean, it's not Wexpro per
Technically,
se,
you could
but it
combine
is,
those
you could
two,
say that
right?
it's part of Wexpro. Okay.
Yeah, you could kind of combine those two. Yep. Okay. All right, so now let's look at our fixed price deals and kind of how they did, the ones that we just did. So we did 3 fixed price RFPs. We did them in August, and we did 3 separate ones. because, well, we were watching the forward curves throughout the summer and trying to find the best time when it was advantageous. So, and that time was kind of at the end of July is when we kind of saw prices. They stayed pretty constant, but they dipped a little bit, and so we thought now's a good time to take advantage of the fixed price deals. So right here, as we look at the graph, this is the price that we paid for our fixed price deals. It's a little bit lower in November because we did a small deal in November, and then we kind of ramped up to that full 80,000 by December 1, and it goes through February 28th. So we did that August 1st, 3rd, and 29th. We kind of separated them out this year because we didn't want to flood the market and drive up those prices too. So we kind of did that. We did 5,000 that went from November through February, and then we did the other 75,000 that was just December through February. Those are similar volumes to 24 and 25 as we looked in the other one. I think we did 84 and 24 and 25, and we did 80,000 this year. And what's great about these fixed price RFPs is that we get them at key locations. Locations that are kind of hard to find the gas at, but we're able to secure that gas, and we're able to do a quick comparison because it's a fixed price. We get all of our suppliers, and they kind of give us their best deal, and we pick the best one. It's a really easy analysis for me to do.
So that's a 575, is that what I'm seeing?
This right here is about 575, and then just below, I think the average of that whole 80,000 was about 598 or something like that. Yeah, and then there's ups and downs in there because it's not all one supplier, it's not all one deal. I think they're sparse between 3 or 4 suppliers or something like that. Was there another question? No? Good. Okay. So that's kind of what we were looking at. This was where forward prices were. If you look at the black, and the black is the SoCal line, so you can see it typically trades higher, and then Northwest, right there in the yellow, or in the green, and then the yellow dotted is our fixed price. So that's kind of when we made the deals, when we entered into those deals, those fixed price deals. That's kind of what pricing was looking like when we did those. Now here is kind of how our fixed price hedge deals did. Right? So the total cost of our fixed price deals over the 24-25 season was $43,880,000. Last year was $56,187,000. $56 million. Sorry, not thousand. That would have been a really good deal. We got $56,000 for last year. No, $56 million. So we were down a bit. Reason being, forward prices were lower this year than they were the previous year, and we did a little bit smaller volumes, 4,000 a day. So
You also bought just slightly less, right?
we bought slightly less, 4,000 a day less, slightly less. So that kind of contributed to it. But the biggest contributing factor is the price. The price was quite a bit lower. Now I kind of like this, I kind of don't. But the total cost of those fixed price deals, if we were able to go out on the market and buy them at Opal, would have been $24,769. 24 million, geez, 24,769,000. So just over 24.5 million. So when we compare those two, the difference is about 19 million, just over 19 million. Now, the reason I have an issue with that is because if we were to replace this 80,000 decatherms here, would we be able to get the gas at Opal flat without any adder? Not likely, especially at the key locations where we're buying it at. So it's kind of skewed a little bit. And the same thing would be true of these savings, right? So the savings show where Opal price, this blue line is the Opal price, and it spiked up above our fixed price. So during this weather event right here, this is where we had savings of 547,000. This one is 1,000. That one's 1,000. So that's where we had savings. And then right here you can see the overspend or the overpay compared to the Opal, and it ends right there at about that 19 million. Yeah.
So the 19 million is the premium that we pay to get a fixed price.
Right. Basically, it's the insurance policy, right? In case there's a cold weather event. So that's the premium that you're paying for that insurance policy in case prices go crazy.
When we had,
And
was
it's,
it a $500 million when they went crazy? Is that how much it goes for?
yeah, I would have to go back and look. but-
No, that's the number.
That's correct.
That's what I heard, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
19.5 billion is not bad.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, that's the premium that you pay. That's kind of what it is. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of a catch-22. If these daily prices run up, then you're going to be paying more too because of the hedge. So.
So your RFP model decides how much, well, you decide, but it recommends, makes recommendation that you choose between about how much fixed price to get compared to these other index for peaks.
So actually, sorry, Commissioner, the RFP model chooses packages between, between first of month pricing, those base load, the peaking, all those packages we get offered through there. The RFP model does not have the fixed price deals in there, right? We do those through separate RFPs later on. We wait and see how much the model chooses for the base load deals, the peaking deals, and then kind of over the summer, because remember he said we did this in like August. In the summer then we layer on those fixed price deals on top of what the model has chosen in the RFP, and that's where we've kind of come up with that 80,000 a day is about, and that varies based on what the base load deals look like that the model did choose. But it's kind of how much we think that the system can deal with on a base load basis, because it is must take, right? We don't want to have too much subscribed in base load deals that if it is warm, we've got all this gas that we're now putting into storage in the summer, or our storage can't even handle. So we kind of find that number, but it's the fixed price deals are layered on top of what the model is really telling us to do.
So they're replacing the daily peak supply that you
So they would
have bought instead?
They would be replacing daily spot. In some instances, we have gone through and said, okay, the model chose some of these first of month deals, and that's why your 140 was lower the year before. The model chose some of those first of month deals, and in sometimes, we've looked at those and like if they were at SoCal or something like that, we would convert those first of month deals into a fixed price deal. But it's really difficult to have the modeling, the RFP modeling run a fixed price deal, because when we do those fixed price RFPs, they're only kept open for an hour or two. Not like when we ask our suppliers to submit for the RFP, we keep it open for a month. And there's no way to keep a fixed price deal open for a month like that. Nobody's just gonna do that. So it's got to be a more dynamic
Why is
kind
that
of
so?
approach.
Why won't they keep it open?
Because the market changes.
Why no, but
So that they're taking on that risk, right? If they say, okay, we'll give you gas for $5, and even 2 hours is kind of taking on a lot of risk, because the market changes during the day. But man, if they say $5 in March when we get those RFP results back, and that market can change quite a bit between March and April or May when we get back to them. So they're taking on a lot of risk by doing that. So
Well, both parties have to agree to not be risk averse.
right. So then they would just build in all that risk to the price, right? Like
7 instead of 5.
yeah, it would be 7 instead of 5. Exactly. Yep.
So, well, what might, and your background's helped, but what I'm trying to figure out is for the optimization process to say what should we end up with. Is there any model like Aurora or a dispatch model or whatever model that actually says, here's the trade-off between using a fixed price versus these others? Or is that simply an after the fact that's you guys as
I can totally commit to us looking at that, but it is. I agree with you. It is something that we've kind of struggled with a bit, as to what is the best methodology for determining A, how much fixed price, and B, we do try and time it and make sure it matches the market, and that we are getting a good price on that fixed price. We do a separate RFP, but maybe there is some way that we can incorporate our Plexos model into that to try and evaluate that number too. And
well, I guess I'm having the disconnect in my mind is that is Plexos you're using for the RFP? Or
Plexos, yep.
So to use Plexos and you say, here's our system's requirements, it's not actually solving the real problem unless you were subtracting out what you ended up doing after the fact. Because if you've got a fixed price base load contract, then Plexus is actually doing a different problem than the one that is actually, relevant. Agree or disagree, or? You understand what
I
I'm
tentatively
asking?
agree with you. I just haven't figured out a better way to do it yet.
Okay. Thanks, that's all.
Is that fair? I'm
I'm just trying to understand.
We're definitely open for suggestions on
No,
how to
I'm
do
just
it.
trying to understand how you actually do the optimization.
Yeah.
And your answers have given me that info.
Yeah, and what might be hard is putting it in that Plexos model is because the prices change so much, it doesn't know what price to pick it at, so it may be tough for it to optimize that too, just because of that, but it is something that we can probably take back and look at.
And when we do run the Plexos model, right, we have forward pricing in there. So it assumes, and those forward prices, we really only adjust on a monthly basis, right? So it almost matches a fixed price because all that spot price is at a fixed forward price, right? So when we model for the year and we model January, we say, okay, what's the forward price look like in January? So it thinks we're buying all of our spot gas at that fixed forward price, right? If we went and looked at it and had to make an assumption as to what our fixed price would be, it would be the forward price, right? So we would put fixed price gas in there at the same price as the spot gas because we wouldn't have any other idea of what to put in there.
Well, but it would be the spot price at the time you anticipate buying the fixed, not when you anticipate using the fixed.
Right, but it would have to be
You
the.
bought it in August, not in January.
Right, but if
Prices would be
we're
very
running the model in March, right, or March and April, we're running, so we would have to use the pricing in March and April that we expect for January,
But
right?
why wouldn't you do it for what you expect in the August or July when you're buying the fixed price? I mean, you're gonna have to have the January in there for.
Right, that's when the price is,
But I'm saying
because,
you're buying them at a different time of the year. You're buying these contracts at a different time of year.
so then we would just have to run the model again in August. Like, I can't tell you in March what they're gonna think the pricing's gonna be in August, because that's already built into the March, what they think pricing is gonna be for January, right? Nobody, like, nobody publishes,
If you can predict January, you can predict August.
but you're always, well, you're talking about an August price for January.
Well, you said you buy them in August.
We buy them in August, but it's January pricing. So the forward prices are for each month looking out, right? So you're buying forward, you're buying a January price. Either way, you're buying a January price. So when you look at those forward curves right now, you're in March buying a January price. Okay, so all you would be doing in August then, you're in August buying a January price. The problem is the curves are ever changing. I don't know what the curve is gonna look like in August for a January price. The expected January price in March is the January price that's in those forwards. That will change over time, but I don't know, there's no way to publish what it's gonna be, because right now, everybody thinks it's gonna be $5 in January, right? Let's just use that number. And by the time August comes around, the thinking maybe it's gonna be $7 in January. But I don't know what they're gonna be thinking in August, in March. So you'd either have to rerun it in August, right? Which is what I think might be the best way to do is rerun it in August at what those August or what the January price is, and see, okay, now how much fixed price does our model want us to buy using the numbers that were in there. But again, it's the problem is when you adjust the spot price that we have in the model, this is where I struggle between fixed price and spot price. The spot price that we put in the model is matching the forward of what we think the price will be in January. So as soon as we update that price in the model, now it's the same. It thinks all of our spot gas is at the $5 or whatever the price is. So it's not gonna know a difference. It's never gonna tell us to pick a fixed price because the fixed price is gonna be the same price as what we think the spot price is gonna be.
You've got a model.
What's that?
You have a model.
Is there any chance you can impute a time series analysis into the model, like give or take, I don't know, 5, 10 years to get an expectation of what that general spot price, or that general fixed price might be? Because you can get a general equilibrium of a fixed price.
And that's kind of what the forward price is, right?
Yeah,
Like
I know.
everybody's modeling what they think prices
it's just
are
a
gonna
matter
be.
of what's the range of years you're going to use to get that estimate. I mean, is it 5? Is it 10? Is it 8?
I mean, then we're,
Outliers.
then we're just, I mean, at that point, then we're speculating on future pricing, right? Which is,
Well, it's better to have
hey, it's
that.
not our specialty to speculate on future. That's why we,
Well, there's-
that's why we.
Well,
you know,
that's the problem of model specification.
Right, but we're using a combination already of the forecast, right?
Yeah.
Which people get paid to
Because you can
create
easily
that
do a
forecast.
longitudinal data analysis and say, well, here's based on the past 15 years, we've seen this trend that can give us a good sense of what the equilibrium is. And if that's a good sense of what the equilibrium is, and if the spot price is more or less way above that or below that, then it gives you a better way of deciding which route to go.
Yeah, I mean, we're basically then kind of speculating our own forward curve is what you're wanting us to do.
You know,
And that's, I mean, it's something
that's
that
all part
we
of
could
data
probably
analysis,
do,
right?
but it's definitely a
where the
next,
center of gravity is.
a next step kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's about measuring where the center of gravity is.
Well,
Yeah.
the problem with that is that's assuming a normal distribution of these prices.
Yeah.
And I don't think natural gas is a normal distribution.
Well, that's a data question, right? I mean, that's a way of.
But I mean, I think there's reasons that Plexos can.
I'm saying, I think it's a model specification.
There's actually,
Yeah, you're right.
Sorry. There's actually a financial product you can trade that actually swaps the first month price in exchange for the gas daily price.
Yep.
I mean, the reality is the market sees those two as basically the same price, right? It's like trying to pick a stock. Like, can you develop an engine that's going to pick a stock price of whether the call option today is better or to actually buy the stock price in January, right? I mean, the market. The
Oh.
second
Market
somebody
is
figures that
volatile
model
in
out,
and of itself, so.
the market will move itself.
Sure.
Right? So I spent a lot of time trying to model this exact thing. I was
Yeah.
like, it's.
No, I know, just like a market.
If it could be done, I
The
wouldn't
market
be
in
here right now.
1990s. And also,
This
based on
random
what time
customer
period, the
seems
market
to have
in
a
1990s is
lot
different
more,
than the market
than we
now.
all do.
So,
Random customer might not be all
what
about
institutional configurations have changed?
I'd like to either suggest we table this for another day and continue
Yeah.
and come back to it.
Yeah, for sure.
I have one quick question. So the 80,000 you purchased in August,
Ah.
fixed price,
Ah.
was it better or worse than the price in March?